Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh has been suspended for the rest of the regular season by Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten. All the details right now, right here. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked on Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I am Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti versus Jim Harbaugh. We just stepped it up a notch. Plus, while we're here, a little weekend preview for what's going on in the Big Ten, but this also includes a big Michigan Penn State football game this weekend. Be sure to subscribe down below and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And we are here every day throughout the week. And a special episode right here going into the Michigan Penn State game this weekend because the Big Ten has suspended football coach Jim Harbaugh for the rest of the regular season as punishment for the on-site scouting, Spygate, sign-stealing scandal, whatever you want to call it. It's been in the news. It's been nonstop for a couple of weeks. It's had like 8 different branch stories, and the commissioner said, all right, I think I got enough here. Enough is enough. I'm going to suspend Jim Harbaugh for 3 games the rest of the season. I want to punish the school. I don't want to punish the kids. It's on Harbaugh. That's what the commissioner says. Now, 2 things right here. The Big Ten is using its sportsmanship clause to jump to the front of the line of an investigation that's already going on about the same subject with the NCAA. But Tony Petitti and the Big Ten felt like they had to jump in and do something because, well, largely because of pressure, peer pressure from the other member schools. Remember the conference calls last week with the coaches followed by the ADs, and everybody said, Tony Petitti, you're the new commissioner here, man. Do something. So he did. Harbaugh suspended. Also, the Big Ten bylaws say that the commissioner can suspend anybody from the sportsmanship clause 2 games and $10,000. That's it. To do anything more, he needs executive committee action involved with representatives from the schools. Now, I don't know about you guys, I haven't heard much about that. So did he get that permission? Did he go ahead and put together a little committee of school presidents? And if it's all of them or some of them, and who's on it? That's the big question I would like to know, because he would have to do that in order to give Harbaugh more than a 2-game suspension, as far as my understanding goes from the bylaws of the Big Ten, which I have read. Okay. So I find that very, very interesting. The 3 games that are affected here, we got the Saturday game against Penn State. All right. That's really the first big matchup on Michigan's schedule. The schedule's been kind of light at the beginning, and now we've got a top 10 matchup here, and it's a big game for both schools. Next week, it's at Maryland, and then the season finale against Ohio State. As things stand right now, Harbaugh will not be on the sideline for any of those 3 games. Interesting also that there is a back and forth between the conference and the schools. The conference informed Michigan that something could go down this week in writing on Monday. Michigan then had 48 hours to respond, which they did. They lawyered up and put together a 10-page answer on Wednesday. Nothing happened Thursday, and then Friday this announcement comes just as Michigan is landing the airplane at Penn State. They left Michigan earlier in the afternoon on Friday. By the time they land, the news breaks. Harbaugh suspended. So interesting timing on that. So, yeah, and Harbaugh traveled with the team. He still may coach. I'll explain that in a moment. But the suspension as of right now would be very similar to the 3-game suspension he already served earlier this year for the first 3 games of the season. He is allowed to continue coaching throughout the week. He just can't be with the team game day at the game venue. Those are the rules as they are right now. By the way, Michigan went 3-0 during that previous 3-game suspension, but those 3 opponents were not Penn State. Those were all home games. That was not Beaver Stadium. So we'll talk about that a little bit in just a second. Michigan is not sitting idle during all this. Like I said, they have been lawyering up. They've got their own counsel and lawyers from Michigan. They got their board of regents on this. They've got a big-time law firm in Washington, D.C. they have hired to handle all this, and they've been prepared for this in case this was the outcome. So things are in motion right now. Harbaugh and the university have already requested a temporary restraining order in Washtenaw County. That's where Ann Arbor is in Michigan. And Washtenaw County trial court Friday night. So that's in place. That is in motion. A judge with a degree from Michigan's law school might be available. I don't know. I don't know how this works. I've never been put in this position before. This is all kind of new. We'll kind of figure this out together. But if their motion is granted, the judge would have the ability to stop the suspension before hearing arguments from the defendants, Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, and also the Big Ten and its commissioner, Tony Petitti. So a judge could rule on a restraining order before kickoff against Penn State. This is crazy. It's just insane. Now, here's the problem, the situation here. A lot of people that I talked to today, I mean, it's Veterans Day weekend. By the way, if you're a veteran, thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day weekend to you from Locked On Big Ten. Courts were closed on Friday and, holiday weekend and all that. So things may move a little slower. I don't know. Again, don't know how this process works. I know things are in motion, and I do know that there could be a ruling at the last second on Saturday that would allow Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines against Penn State. My understanding then from that point, a hearing would have to take place within 2 weeks. Do the math. Look at the calendar. That hearing could possibly be on the eve of the Ohio State game at the end of the season. If you fast forward a couple of weeks, this is unbelievable. You can't write a script like this. It's unreal. Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, said that Michigan did not make a case of innocence in its 10-page response. It just offered technical arguments designed to delay accountability. Maybe they did. Maybe there was a lot of lawyer speak in there. Some of Michigan's response reportedly included evidence that other schools were stealing their signs and sharing their signs with other schools. There was a story out this week that Ohio State and Rutgers got together and gave Purdue the Michigan signs before the Big Ten championship game last year. Okay. Tony Petitti said, look, cheating is not acceptable just because other schools do it. Which is a whole nother question here that I would like to get into. If he's going to suspend Jim Harbaugh and he's been given evidence that these other schools have participated in something that in cheating, is he going to end up suspending the whole league? Like, is every coach going to be suspended 3 games between now and sometime in 2024? That's a sidebar. That's another issue. We'll talk about that on another day, but it was something I like to bring up here on Locked On Big Ten. So something to think about as well. None of this concludes or supersedes what the NCAA is doing. That investigation is still going on. Again, the Big Ten stepped in line and wanted to make its own action. So you have to think if this gets bad for Michigan and the NCAA going into next year says, yeah, Harbaugh suspended 6 games for Spygate. Well, is it 3 games served already because of what the Big Ten did? Maybe, perhaps, but we don't know. There's a lot of questions here. This is, I'll be honest, this is one of the strangest stories I've ever had in my 35-year career. I mean, I'll put OJ at the top. For those of you old enough to remember that, this might be second because it's got like 8 separate side stories going on at the same time. You've got, you got Michigan winding down a season, playing for possibly a national championship. You got the Connor Stallion stuff. You got the Western Michigan angle. And who was that guy on the sideline? And did Jim McElwain know? And don't forget, Jim McElwain was a coach at Michigan in 2019 and presumably would know Connor Stallions. I'm the only one really talking about that angle from what I've heard. And I've been banging on that drum for a week. That's just another side story that's going to have. And by the way, the NCAA is investigating Western Michigan now because of that. There's the Blake Corum, the fake business deal that Stallion set up with the LLC. It's incredible. And on top of that, you got Harbaugh's contract extension that's on. Is it on hold? Is it rescinded? Is Michigan going to say, hey, we stand by our man? And by the way, the week of the Ohio State game, are they going to say, boom, here's a 10-year contract for $120 million because Jim Harbaugh's our guy? So far, Santa Ono has stood by his man. Harbaugh has huge support from the school president. So there are all these things at play, and it is just a bizarre story. We love your comments. You can hit me up on Twitter or X, as we call it, at Talk Big Ten number 10. Don't forget our website, talkbig10number10.com. And of course, on YouTube with the comments, hundreds, thousands of comments have been coming in. Thank you very much. I get to as many as I can. I'll probably be sitting on the couch tomorrow watching the Penn State game against Michigan, going through answering comments on YouTube. And that reminds me, I'm glad I reminded myself of that right now. Saturday, as soon as the Michigan-Penn State game is over, Locked On Big Ten is going to go live on YouTube. We've been doing this on Saturdays lately with a lot of success. It's a lot of fun. We've been doing them at different times, maybe halftime of the 7:30 game at night or just in the middle afternoon. But this is going to be very specific. We are going to go live right here, Locked On Big Ten on YouTube, as soon as that Michigan-Penn State game is over. I think that'll be around 3:30-ish Eastern time on Saturday. So I'm inviting you to join us there. All right, a lot to digest here. What does this all mean moving forward for Saturday? I want to talk about all of that coming up in just 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. I want to tell you about Prize Picks. This is fun. You got to get into this. Prize Picks, you take a couple of players, 2, 3, 4, 6 players, group them together, throw some stats with them, say more than or less than at the stats. If it's more than and you said more than, you get winnings. It's really cool. I'll explain it to you here. And now they're allowing you to mix leagues, players from leagues, basketball and football, for example. You could say, all right, I want Steph Curry. He's playing tonight. I'm going to say he's going to score more than 29 points, and I'm going to pair that with Joe Burrow, who's going to throw more than 2 touchdown passes against the Texans this weekend. Boom. They both go. You're a winner. You impress your friends with your knowledge and your winnings. It's very fun. It's very simple. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Got Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And I want to tell you about Athletic Brewing. It's time for the Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. I'm going to make it Tony Petitti, right? How much has he changed? He's changing the landscape of everything going on this weekend with football. The commissioner of the Big Ten laying down the hammer. He's our game. He might literally be our game changer of the week, taking a coach off of a sideline. Just throw that out there. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, well-crafted, just like full-strength beer. They win a lot of contests across the country in taste, too. They're phenomenal. They're fit for all times. You can drink them anytime, anywhere. Make any activity even more enjoyable. You can do it while watching the game. In fact, I have some right here, right there. That's right. That's what it looks like. It's in a local store I have here, too. You can order it. I'll tell you how. You can find it, Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the code LOCKEDON and get 15% off your first online order. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. So, yeah, we got some football and some interesting games in the Big Ten this weekend. And let us start with Michigan at Penn State and what can happen here. First of all, this could be super crazy. All right. We're all gonna be watching. I'm gonna be going back on live, like I said, Saturday, right up to game time. We're gonna get this ruling from a judge. Is Jim Harbaugh taking a separate bus to the stadium and then off the last second gonna appear on the sidelines, or is he really out for the next 3 games and only coming back for the Big Ten championship if Michigan gets into it, and then the college football playoffs if Michigan gets into that? So, again, never have seen anything like this in my entire career. Game's going to be an interesting game. I told you, look, Michigan's 3-0 without Harbaugh this year. Can they run the table again? Another 3-0 if he's out for 3 games. Penn State and Beaver Stadium is not like playing at home against the schools like East Carolina and Bowling Green and schools like that they played at the beginning of the year. But I've watched this team all year. They are laser focused. They're mature, got a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of future NFL players, maybe 20, 23 players. They're going to the NFL. They know what to do. They know what they have to do. They just haven't done it against an opponent like Penn State in front of a crowd like Beaver Stadium yet. I think they'll be okay in that regard, with or without Jim Harbaugh. I think they've been on a mission, and I think they're ready to go. I also think they are the better team here. But as I mentioned all week long on our podcast, this is a must-win game for James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions if they want to be a big-time contender. He's a super good coach. This is a super good football team, but they can't knock through the glass ceiling and be mentioned in the same breath of Ohio State and Michigan unless they beat one of them, and they've already lost to Ohio State. So they got to get this game against Michigan, all right? And I hope they win the tiebreakers. Maybe everybody goes 1-1 against each other of the big 3. Maybe they got to win this game. I don't know if they will. So it's going to be must-see TV at noon on Fox, noon Eastern. A couple other games I'll mention before we hit it. Of course, Indiana is at Illinois. Both teams coming off a win from last week. Interesting game there. And Indiana just came off its win against Wisconsin. Illinois just had a last-second win as well against Minnesota. So this game could be – in fact, Illinois, all the games they win are at the last second, whether it be the season opener Toledo, whether it be last weekend, whether it just comes down to the wire. Noon on Peacock, Maryland is at Nebraska. Both teams need one more win to be bowl eligible. Now, Nebraska looked like they're kind of getting their act together. Before their loss to Michigan State last week, they had won 5 of 6. And maybe a controversial call on a fumble, maybe incomplete pass, moving forward that cost them a chance at that game, maybe. Maryland is the interesting one. I'm a little worried about the Terps. What do you say, Terp fans? You started out 5-0. You've lost 4 straight. And I know exactly when it happened. If you watch this podcast regularly, it was the second half of the Ohio State game. You were leading that game. You're looking to go 6-0. Kind of like the Penn State story, trying to prove that you belong with the upper echelon. And all of a sudden it fell apart. Ohio State scored 27 unanswered points on you, and they haven't won since. Ohio State broke Maryland. They did. Here's the bigger problem. This is a must-win game for Maryland, too, against Nebraska. And I don't know if they're going to win or not. This is going to be a pretty close game. If Maryland loses this game, that's 5 straight losses. They're 5-5 after going 5-0. Now 5-5 if they lose this game. You know who Maryland has next, right? Michigan. I don't know if they're winning that game. So you go from 5-0 to 5-6, maybe. You've got to win this game against Nebraska, Maryland. You've absolutely got to win. Also, if you like old school leather helmet, let's play some defense football. I don't know about the leather helmets, but Rutgers and Iowa, there's not going to be any scoring in that game. It's got the lowest over-under in the history of college football at 28 points last time I checked. From our friends at FanDuel, by the way. 28. There's not going to be 4 touchdowns in this football game. Take the under. Even though it's 28, just take the under on this thing. Rutgers is a good defense. Iowa has a great defense. Iowa has no offense, and yet they win. I made a good case for Kirk Ferentz to be Big Ten Coach of the Year in a podcast 2 days ago. Go back and check it out. on Locked On Big Ten. It's there. It's on the record. It's probably going to be Ryan Day, but it's not going to be Harbaugh because he only coached 6 of the 12 games. Am I right? Northwestern is at Wisconsin. Wisconsin needs that. They're trying to get bowl eligible. Doubleheader on NBC Saturday night. Minnesota at Purdue. That'll be the better of the two games because at 7:30 in prime time, it's Ohio State hosting Michigan State, number 1 Ohio State. I think that's going to be like a 32-point game. I hope the broadcasters have their blowout material on that. Anyway, that's a quick look at the games. We, again, are going to go live on Locked On Big Ten on our YouTube channel right here, right as soon as the Michigan-Penn State game is over with. All right, so we'll see you there. We'll talk about whether Jim Harbaugh was on the sidelines or not, whether the judge came through for Michigan or not, or whether the 3-game suspension is intact and in full force. Never a dull moment in the Big Ten. Never a dull moment on Locked On Big Ten. You can hit me with comments on Twitter at TalkBig10, our website, talkbig10.com, and of course, and that's all with the number 10. Don't spell it out. And comments here on YouTube as well. Also invite you to check out our friends at the Locked On Sports Today podcast for the latest of everything else going on in sports. In the meantime, we'll catch you Saturday live after the game. If not, we'll catch you on a Monday with our regular schedule of podcasts that come out every morning, audio only and the video. We've got them both for whatever's easiest for you to check out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Thanks for spending some time with us. I can't wait to talk to you again. I can't wait till this weekend gets rolling with these games. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.